Bet. All right, sorry, y'all. Sorry for the technical difficulties. But here we are. So it was an injury update that came out. MRI confirmed that Jayden Daniels has a sprained knee. DQ just had his presser and discussed that pretty much Jayden Daniels will be day to day. The MRI, he had it on Friday, and pretty much basically his return to play progress will be reevaluated this Friday. A final decision will come out, and they'll determine whether it will be Marcus Mariota or Jayden Daniels at the helm. Dan Quinn pretty much emphasized that he want to make sure that Jayden, makes and hit all his markers for strength, for his confidence, as well as his change direction, his speed. So he doesn't want to rush things back. And we all know Jayden is a guy that, he's going to want to play regardless. He's going to say he's not hurt. He's going to act like there's nothing wrong with him. So we got to make sure that we protect Jayden from Jayden. So Dan Quinn pretty much emphasized all of that. And, it's going to be, a decision, and we'll kind of evaluate things from there. He also started out, of course, the news already came out that, Austin Eckler is out for the season. He confirmed that. He confirmed the same for Dietrich Wise. And he also mentioned that Noah Brown and John Bates, both with the growing injuries, they're considered long shots for the game this Sunday. So with that being said, we got a big injury bug floating around. A lot of guys around the NFL, sustained injuries, but for us, it hit us pretty hard. So it's a lot to kind of evaluate and see what goes on. But overall, we're just gonna have to next man up. We're gonna have to see what's going on. But in reference to Jayden, if Jayden doesn't play, the question remains like, how will this offense move? What will Cliff, Kingsbury do? I'm predicting that, if Mariota is at the helm and Jayden doesn't play, then, the offense, of course, is going to have to be switched up. I predict more of a run-heavy type offense. So that would mean that, Chris Rodriguez could be, called up and, be activated this week. It could mean that we can get a heavier doses of Bill. The running game, you're going to have to establish the run a little bit more, because you can't just rely on Mariota to do some of the same things that, Jayden does, because he's just simply not that guy. Mariota is more conservative. And, when he stepped in last year, in Jayden's absence, twice last year, he did pretty good. Did us a solid, when Jayden kind of came out pretty bad in the beginning against Dallas, in a game that, didn't really mean anything for us as far as, playoff berth, but it did, mean something for us for seeding. And, Mariota came in and, kind of picked Dallas apart, and we was able to come out of that game in a victory. If you don't remember, he threw the game-winning touchdown to Terry on the fade, which was the record-breaking touchdown as well. But also, there was another game that, Mariota stepped in, and, he did pretty good. So I'm confident that Mariota can, manage the game and get us through. But then we're going to have the other guys are going to have to step up. Terry McLaurin, for instance, will have to step up. Deebo Samuel will, have to continue to be that, that gadget guy, as well as, make plays. So we're kind of, be interested to see what goes there. But also it's like, with Noah Brown out, what did that help? And what did that mean for Jayden Lane? Does he step in and, get more reps? They just reactivated, Reed just brought Chris Moore back. So, he's going to be a guy to look out for. A guy that, in game one against the Giants, he fared pretty well. Over training camp, didn't necessarily think he did all that great in training camp. He had quite a few drops, even during in the preseason, but he still ended up making that team. So, does a guy like Luke McCaffrey step in and provide some, pivotal minutes? Luke McCaffrey had a, nice catch against the Packers the other day, but he didn't really do anything much more. So, with Noah Brown potentially being out, and like we said, considered a long shot, what does that wide receiver room look like? It's a lot of questions around this, because, you got your quarterback, your starting running back is gone. Now you got receiver injuries. John Bates is the tight end. He got injuries. We got injury on the defensive line with Dietrich Wise. So it's going to be a lot of moving pieces to kind of figure this out. But Dan Quinn continues to emphasize next man up. And guys going to step in. One of the corresponding moves with the announcement that that Wise has gone to IR, we brought back Jalen Holmes. He's been a guy that had the last couple of years he did pretty good. A developmental piece. He's a guy that's liked around the team. I would like to see what that means for him. But Dan Quinn continues to emphasize bringing in the guys that's in the building. He talked about we have guys with similar stature as Wise already in the building. He wouldn't reveal a whole lot of stuff, but he said basically that those will be the replacements along that side of the ball. Quinn also hinted moving guys around the D line, so possibly using like Kinlaw or Deron Payne to kind of play that elephant in role. It was something that Dan Quinn pretty much did when he was with Pete Carroll in Seattle. So they could get creative and some moving pieces, but overall we'll just have to see. As well as on a running back side, he also talked about that Chris Rodriguez will be back in the mix. He praised Bill as a reliable blocker, and also he said that because the question was asked, with Bill, who's going to be that guy that catches out of the backfield? Who's going to be that guy that gets back there and do some run blocking? So it's kind of trying to decide how we would kind of fill those gaps. He continues to sound confident in his guys, so we'll see. But I think that you should see a game where Bill should be able to get over 15, around 15 to 20 carries. This offensive line, I think that even in the game with, I was telling Reedie earlier, even in the game against Green Bay, Bill only had 4 carries, but he had positive yards. He had none of those carries was for loss. He had about 20-some yards off those 4 carries, averaging 4 to 5 yards a pop. Not really understanding of why Cliff kind of strayed totally away from the run game. So I would like to see that kind of pick up. But overall, I think that, we'll be fine with running the ball as long as, Mariota can still be able to make key decisions, push the ball downfield, and, just kind of be that change of pace. Overall, when he talked about the Packers game, he said he felt like the team didn't start well on either side of the ball. So just the mindset wasn't there. It kind of came out flat. He said we're best at being the attacker and not allowing ourselves to be attacked. So, we got to come out and striking. We got to come out with a lot of energy. We got to come out with assertiveness, not just sitting back and just allowing things to happen and just watching. Also, he said you got to fight all the way through the fourth quarter. He did like that, we kind of put up a little bit of fight towards the end, but he would like to see more from the team. But, you still got a lot of questions. The Raiders, they come in. I'm hearing AJ Terrell, may not be not AJ Terrell. I'm hearing that the Raiders, they're dealing with some injury bugs as well. Bowers, the question is, will he play? There's questions around will he play tonight in the Monday night game, but also we'll kind of see how that pans over to us. Bowers is a true weapon. We saw what Tucker Kraft did to our defense out there. So we're gonna have to make sure we're on our P's and Q's. A guy like Will Harris gonna have to step up and definitely cover well in those situations because that's a key matchup. A guy like Quan, guys are gonna have to really do their jobs because I expect Pete Carroll to kind of try to exploit this a little bit. He knows Dan Quinn well. They were on the same staff in Seattle. And Dan Quinn kind of came up under him. So this is going to be an interesting game. Marcus Mariota kind of gets to see his old team. Maybe he has a little extra motivation there. But yeah, overall, it's just has to be. It's a key matchup, and we got to make sure that we get in here and we handle our job and we do it right. You know what I mean? So again, any questions out there for me before we head out? I just wanted to hop on and kind of update you guys of what's going on. If you have any questions, definitely put them in the chat, and feel free to kind of let me know what you're thinking. Let's see here. Enjoy your L. Enjoy your other L next week. No way Max Crosby and Geno Smith letting the Commanders win. Max Crosby is definitely, somebody to watch out for. Josh Connolly Jr., he's kind of been struggling against these pass rushers, week one. I mean, he had some real tests too. Week one, you're going against the Giants defensive line. You got Thibodeau, you got Burns, Abdul Carter. That's a hefty defensive line. Then you run it right back with Gray, with Parsons, and that defense that they done built over there in Green Bay. And the rookie pretty struggled. We talked about earlier where teams are going to look at that as a weakness for our offensive line, and they're going to attack. So we have to make sure that we chip. We design maybe some rollouts or run some some zones on the offensive line to kind of offset that. But we can't just leave him out there on the island with Max Crosby. That would be a disaster. I'm confident in what Josh Connolly could become. Based on his tape when he came out of college, his footwork, he was a great pass rusher. He went against some top guys, in his conference. So I'm pretty confident in his ability. It's just overall just kind of hoping that, those things can kind of the ball can kind of get rolling a little faster and he can kind of get his feet wet a little bit more and, produce more out there. But, other than that, I think it's a pretty good matchup overall. Like we mentioned, who steps in at tight end 2? Will Ben Sinnott be able to take this opportunity? If Bates can't go, if Ben Sinnott takes this opportunity to kind of step in and, be a extension to the run game with the pass blocking, or can he come in and, kind of show us what he did in college and why we drafted him in the second round? It's a lot of people talking about, it's getting close to time is ticking on him on the second year tight end. He hasn't really produced much, hasn't really shown us anything. And that hasn't even, not in camp, not in training camp, not in preseason, not anywhere. So, Ben Sinnott, it's a big question mark around him and what he will provide for us. So just hoping that, some things work out there. But, if you're just joining us, make sure you like, share, subscribe, at Reedie Zee on all platforms. But again, we want to just kind of talk about that. Jayden Daniels is considered day-to-day. He's already began his return to play process, and they're going to focus in on his strength, his confidence, and his mobile ability and change the direction. If he checks all of those boxes, he should be a good to go. But, just to be real, I personally think that we should sit him. It's still early in the season. He's our greatest asset to this team. You can't just throw him out there, and we don't want a redo of RG3. Leg and knee injuries are serious. For what Jayden does for us and in his game, it wouldn't be smart, in my opinion, to throw him out there if he's not 100%. So, yeah. So, no extra comments came in. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out. But, stay tuned for more updates as they come. And we'll be, we're doing more shows. We have a show tomorrow. We have a show Wednesday night, the Burgundy Breakdown with Juan, John, Reedie, and I, as well as, Reedie Zee. We have some other things cooking with some guest appearances and whatnot. And we're definitely going to do a pregame show for the Raiders. And also tune in. We're having a watch party on Sunday for the game against the Raiders. But yeah, without further ado, I'm Z, Reedie Zee. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties to begin the show, and I'm out. Reedie Zee Show. It's the Reedie Zee Show.